Governing data value streams, or reimagining the data governance opportunity. Hi, I'm Mark Pico, and in this short webinar I want to provide a different perspective on how data governance can be applied to actually drive change within an organization. I'm an analytics consultant and educator with several decades of experience. Data has been the focus through my entire career. Starting with an engineering education, I've developed experience in a variety of areas, including operations and process control, consulting, software development, analytics and data management, and more recently I've been focusing on education delivery, speaking at conferences, facilitating workshops. But when all is said and done, data, data, and data have been the common themes of my experience. I live in the Toronto area, and you can see my email if you want to contact me to give me some feedback. First, let's provide a little bit of context and background to my perspective on this webinar. The pace of business and technology change are accelerating. We all see that in our lives, and many factors come along to disturb it, things like COVID or other kinds of factors. But many new opportunities are constantly emerging related to data science, analytics, artificial intelligence, which introduce new risks and challenges. Success is based on combining many ingredients, many complex ingredients, and many additional ingredients. How do we combine all of the necessary ingredients or recipe components for our success? So let's take a very general view of governance first and think how governance plays a role in answering that question of how do we combine the right components. So in general, we can think of governance as a process that regulates. It regulates things like conditions of physical, financial, natural, and social systems. It may regulate the behaviors of people and how they interact with each other. It may regulate the performance of different processes or activities we follow. And fundamentally, governance in its many forms may usually start with the idea of a policy. A policy is an expression of an intent or an objective, something we want to accomplish. And we then turn policies into procedures or processes and activities or guided steps, and we assign accountabilities to make sure that people follow the procedures that we're defining in our policies. And we have some level of an enforcement model to make sure that people can be held to account if they don't follow the policies or repercussions. Now, in everyday life, we can think about examples of governance around things like office safety, financial compliance with regulations, traffic flow, the fact we have to follow the same rules and regulations for safe driving, whether it's traffic signs or traffic signals or speed limits. How we choose to adopt technology, that we have the proper perspective in life and we govern technology adoption in a way that makes sense to our company's plans. Dealing with fraud and mitigating fraud. Governance may have rules to help us identify ways that are fraudulent activities that we can be proactive in responding to. Environmental sustainability. How do we adapt and ensure that our organization is consistent in its policies relative to waste disposal or emissions or things that require a cleaner environment? Equipment reliability is a very common one, where companies that have fleets or equipment or machines that they're maintained at a way that they're safe and reliable to use. So governance in general could be applied to this type of problem. Now, if we think about governance in general, I said it starts off with the idea of a strategic intent. So that tells us what we're trying to accomplish. Now, what we're trying to accomplish is based on our own vision and objectives for our organization, but it's also influenced by the different kinds of drivers we're faced with. And drivers are external forces that could be a shock, it could be a gradual change, things like the arrival of COVID, things like a new election, things like the war in Ukraine, things like a bad weather event. All of these are drivers. There could be technology drivers, there could be demographic drivers. All of these are causing change in our society. They're very disruptive. So governance needs to say what policies do we need to develop around the things I want to govern, whether it's around workers or equipment, but the policies should lead to the behavior I'm looking for. And I need to hold people to account. So accountability is assigned and policies are directed towards the people that do work and the behaviors they exercise. We want to make sure that the work people do is aligned with the conditions I want in my governed items. The things being governed are within the scope. And if I can achieve things being governed in the way I want, in the way I desire, I should produce some sort of increasing value for doing that. And there's also risk that goes along with this because we're dealing with uncertainty. So in a very general level, this can be applied to corporate governance, to process governance, to project governance, to governance of our society, governance of traffic, governance of financial transactions, etc. But what does this have to do? We talk about policies. We talk about the behaviors that are really driven and affected by those policies. We then talk about the things that are produced by the workers in terms of, or maintained by the workers. So equipment or machines or products or services. Anything maintained or delivered by workers are the things being governed. We think of these as, could be decisions that are delivered by workers. It could be people are delivered because we hire people. It could be the assets we're trying to build or the processes we manage. These are all potential things within our governance scope. And the scope of general governance could be anything that makes sense from a society point of view, a company point of view, or a personal point of view. And we think about the x-axis here as trying to get a sense for the things within our scope, whether in this example assets or processes or decisions. And the governance goals are defined as, what am I trying to accomplish by governing things? Is it increase safety, increase capability, increase quality, security, etc.? What am I trying to achieve by putting policies around those various things, if you like? Now, what does this mean from a data governance point of view? Because we talk about data governance as related, obviously, to the data world. So if we think of data governance as opposed to specific general governance, we think about, again, there's a strategic intent. Because we have a strategy for data, and we want to use data in a variety of use cases today in our organizations. And the drivers that are causing this are usually competitive drivers, regulatory drivers, drivers around innovation. So drivers help us decide what data we need to use and why and how. So the strategic intent primarily is going to be around how we can use data for a variety of purposes. The policies we develop and to hold people account, the work they follow, make sure that the work they do to produce databases or systems or reports or whatever are aligned to our intent of the policy. And again, if we do this, there's a certain level of value produced by doing this. So data governance might specifically have a strategic intent around competition, and competition using analytics usually has a direct link to the concept of reusing, sharing, and repurposing data. And that emerges as the really dominant theme that drives really the birth of data governance in the first place. As to why we do this is to transform data into a corporate asset, i.e. make it repurposable, shareable, and have others use it that weren't involved in the direct creation of it. The drivers for this are regulations, competition, customer expectations, and new kinds of technologies. Now, the work we're talking about governing are quite often the people that are designing, building systems that generate data. It's usually technology focused. But when we think about the behaviors people have when they build systems, it isn't always about the primary thing about sharing data after it's captured. Quite often it's about building systems to address a certain process. So we're trying to make sure that people that do work have the intent and the vision that data they're capturing has to be shareable in the future, and that has a lot of implications in terms of characteristics of the data. So how we design data systems, how we influence the architecture of them, how we manage quality and security, how we generate and increase data literacy so that people can consume data we're collecting in a more effective way. These are all policy areas we could develop. The procedures are usually one of management procedures to make sure the work's being done, life cycle to make sure we archive it and use it appropriately, having the proper methods and approaches to drive the things we're looking for, and to influence collaboration so we can actually learn how to share things with each other. Now, what's being governed is the result of those influenced activities. It's the data. So data is being produced by the systems that our work has created. And so we need to have alignment within our data so that we produce data that is reusable for other people. So there's an alignment factor around the different business subjects we have, the different systems we produce, the processes we manage around data, and the alignment with use cases that are diverse, which are going to be created much after the systems were that created the original data. The impact is that we want data with higher quality to be reusable, secure, available, and accessible to a wide range of people so that they can consume that data to drive new decisions, think of innovative ideas, look for patterns and trends, and improve customer service. But if we think of data governance by itself, we commonly think of data governance as ending when data is initially being consumed. We think that if data is reusable and shareable, that means more people can use it. But what happens after they use it? The downstream activities that lead to true business value. Because if data governance usually stops at the boundary of can we consume data with more people? So I think my premise here is that simply calling it data governance is too narrow. Because our objective with data isn't to use data, it's to make money with it. It's to generate business value. It's to monetize it and turn it into something that the company wants and desires to create in its organization, whether it's a profitable or nonprofit or government or education type facility. We all want to generate value for our stakeholders. So if we shift our focus from simply data to understanding true data value, what changes in our perspective? We need to somewhat reimagine data governance and really to some degree broaden it. We need to start thinking about what are called value streams. And value streams are a variety of components that have to be in place to create true business value. And it's the value stream that needs to work seamlessly so that data flows from one part of the value stream to the monetary side of the value stream at the other end. Independently, data cannot create true business value. Data is an enabler of business value. So there's a connection, there's a relationship here between the data and what we do with it to drive the change we're looking for. Data value is what we should be caring about, not simply data use. So my premise in this webinar is to say that we need to govern data value streams, not just data. So what exactly is a value stream? Well, the value stream is any set of components or items that collectively have to go through as a series of steps possibly, or a series of ingredients to produce the impact we're looking for. So it's almost like a recipe. So if we want to create a recipe like a really good pot of chili or of spaghetti sauce, we think about the impact we're looking for as the flavor, the taste. And that's because we're adding a series of steps and ingredients at the right temperatures along the way that add up to the results we're looking for. So the impact is the desired value. Now, if it's a nice pot of chili, it's the flavor. If it's an organization, it's going to be some sort of monetary reward. So the categories of value we could break down into for an organization are things like efficiency, which means a reduction in cost. It could be around effectiveness, which really means we're producing results that we want to do strategically, which could be an increase in revenue. It's around quality, doing things more consistently with less waste. It's around innovation, where we're doing things differently than we did before, and we're now becoming disruptive in the marketplace. It could be around agility, which is to be more responsive to change in the marketplace. As our customers' tastes and requirements change more quickly, can we respond to them? So we think of breaking impact or value into these different 5 categories to think, okay, how can data and its value stream, we'll talk about very shortly, add up to that kind of value we're looking to create? So a data value stream, as opposed to a generic value stream, this is a very simplified version. We have five blocks in the value stream, from impact to the actions that led to the impact, to the decisions that led to the actions, to the analysis that led to the decisions, to the data that informed the analysis. So data is sitting on the far left. Everything to the right of data is part of the value stream that leads to true business value. It's the desired value or impact I'm trying to create. And again, it could be across any one of these categories. So I may want to enable an efficiency initiative, an effectiveness initiative, etc. Now, the actions we take to create the impacts are the work we do. These are the processes, activities, and projects we carry out that lead to an increased value or an improved impact. So the categories of work we do are commonly at different levels. They're either strategic, tactical, or operational. Strategic type work is based around planning and deciding what markets we want to grow into, what margins we want to increase. Do we want to rationalize certain assets? Do we want to acquire a company? How do we want to grow and prosper? So strategic decisions give us long-term targets that define success for us. Tactical actions are usually based on resource acquisition and resource management. So we think about procurement, we think about budgeting, we think about hiring, we think about seeking in capital investments, we think about construction activities or leasing facilities. Those are all tactical type activities. They provide resources to the company to do work. Now, the operational type actions we do in our companies are using those resources to operate our business model. We build products or services, we deliver them to our customers, we serve our customers, we administer those things so we can get financial rewards for it and live and prosper within our organization. So all of these are important. So we want to have data value supporting different kinds of actions, which means we have different kinds of decisions to make. So a decision in simple terms is exploring what options are in front of you, understanding the impact of those different options in terms of the quality or consistency of those decisions, how timely the decision has to be made, and what risk you're taking on by not knowing with certainty certain impacts of your decisions. There could be elements of uncertainty, which means there's a higher level of risk. So when we're looking at decision making, we want to make sure it's the right decision at the right time to drive the impact we're looking for. But how are decisions identified and formulated? Well, it's through analysis, or sometimes we might call it analytics. Analysis is one of problem framing, to say how do we fix a problem, or how do we pursue an opportunity. And to frame it properly in a data world means I can now use data to help me enable the decision maker as they're exploring options and considering the choices they have. Analysis also looks at the information I need, i.e. what questions do decision makers have to answer? What algorithms do I need to generate a new insight, like a prediction or a forecast or looking for some sort of an unusual condition? What level of integration do I need in data to answer questions and to drive the insights? What level of quality do I need in my data? What kind of models or delivery, machine learning models or statistical models, what kind of models do I need to help drive a decision? So this is the analysis phase within the value stream, and it gets to the heart of what we were talking about earlier, which is the data. Now the data is simply one aspect of a value stream. So data has to be concerned with things like quality and security. Is it accessible to people? Do they understand it? Is it timely? Is it available? And is it compliant? These are characteristics of the data. Now, traditionally, data governance is focused on that left box and has said if we achieve these things, then terrific, we're in good shape. But my premise is, who's considering the rest of the value chain? Is it being governed? How do we know that people are incented and motivated and held to account to make decisions appropriately, to apply analysis, to take the right actions based on data, not be fooled by data, but to listen to data? And how do we link these other pieces into an overall governance function? So what should we govern? The answer to this is, it's the things we're going to govern. So this is a direct function of the scope we've chosen for our governance initiative. So the things that are being governed, is it simply data, or is it data value or data value streams? Because I said that business value cannot be directly attributed to data. Data is enabling a business value. And there's these pieces between the data and the results that sometimes are not governed by anybody, and we wonder why we're not getting the results we're looking for. So this implies that the traditional scope of data governance has been around the data to turn it into an asset, but the other pieces of the value stream are incredibly important to make this useful and impactful to the company. So the recommended scope is to take a value stream approach and to understand the different value streams you're trying to improve on, and to use governance accordingly and apply the policies, the accountabilities, and the rules and the incentives to all these steps in the value stream, not simply the first step. So the implications are that it's broader, it's more complex, there's more stakeholders, and now governance itself has a direct link to business value. It's no longer an indirect link that we talk with if it's simply data governance. So if we reconsider the scope, and now we're governing value streams, we think about the pieces of that value stream around whether it's data, the models, the skills, decisions, or actions, or other items we can put in here. Which of those are we going to govern, and for what purpose? What are the goals I want to apply? So we think about where these items on the x-axis intersect with things on the y-axis, and that little intersection point becomes a piece of scope. And the more cells we have, the more scope we're trying to govern. And we can have different kinds of goals, different kinds of things, and they paint the picture of what our scope would be, which would be much broader than simply data itself. So how do we get started? Well, it's all about coordinating your current work. A lot of governance initiatives is really orchestrating work that's already being done. It's getting alignment and consistency. But we have to get out of our silos. We have to think organizationally and not departmentally. We need to think about customers first. It's through serving customers we create value. So how can we best improve customer engagement, customer service, customer loyalty in a way that drives the value we're looking for? We need to understand our value streams. These are the components that enable happy, satisfied customers that pay their bills on time. We need to use virtual organizational structures. We're typically organized in silos, which is vertical, and this type of governance requires organizational views that are virtual because value streams are horizontal in nature. We have to do this having virtual teams that are collaborative, and we have to assign accountabilities for results and to make sure the right resources are available to achieve the sharing of ideas across the different silos. This is commonly done through a program. So program delivery is the secret sauce for success. A program needs to be designed that has targeted business objectives for it. That's a success criteria. And the program would then coordinate multiple projects. Things about remediating data, looking at the insights we want to generate, or maybe it's a process improvement project to rethink how our work is done. Maybe it's to re-engineer our decision-making processes. Maybe it's around looking at how we develop skills in our people and their data literacy. Those are all different types of projects that have to be aligned across the value chain. And the program, if it's a data governance value program, we will provide this as a service to the organization. And then we can think of governance, the governance program as an enabler of excellence, an enabler of improvement, not simply a more isolated view where it's simply making data available to you. So integrated programs may have different names. It may be called operational excellence in some companies. It may be called a data science program. It could be called a digital transformation program. Maybe we're following lean management and lean management principles. Maybe it's a customer experience improvement program or process automation. Or maybe we call it business intelligence and analytics program. All of these are various words and labels for the same idea. It's a program that's designed to holistically understand how value is created across the organization by different value streams and enabling those value streams through a proper governance function. So data governance or data value governance becomes the fundamental enabler for the true business value or data monetization we're all seeking through our investments. I'd like to thank you for listening to the webinar. If you have any comments, questions, or general feedback, please contact me at the email below. And thank you very much and have a good rest of your day.